Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Today we are jumping straight into the really fascinating, highly intricate, and honestly, often totally misunderstood world of how substances biologically alter the human body and brain. We're skipping the surface level stuff today and diving right into the hard science of our internal wiring. Let's get into it.
So it's a fundamental question, right? What is actually happening inside your brain when a person takes a drug? Look, we know that some substances make you feel incredibly relaxed, while others give you this massive, intense rush of energy or confidence. But, behind those temporary feelings, behind the subjective experience, there is something much more complex and literally mechanical happening right inside the brain's architecture.
All right, here's our roadmap. We're looking at 5 key areas today: the brain's chemical messengers, speeding up and slowing down, pain, perception and reality, the science of addiction, and finally, the long-term consequences.
Section 1. The brain's chemical messengers. To really grasp how drugs hijack our system, we've got to establish our baseline first.
Okay, let's talk about neurotransmitters. You can think of these as a giant biological lock and key system. They're your brain's natural built-in chemical signals. And scientists have actually identified over 100 different types, which is wild. They control everything. I mean, your current mood, your energy levels, memory, how you process pain, even how you make decisions. So when a drug enters the body, it basically acts like a master key. It directly interferes with this exact system. It might artificially crank up certain signals, totally block others, or even artificially mimic the exact feelings the brain normally produces on its own. And, well, that interference is exactly where the danger starts.
Section 2. Speeding up and slowing down. Let's see what happens when substances artificially mess with that baseline, starting with stimulants and depressants.
Let's hit stimulants first. These instantly ramp up activity in your brain and nervous system. You feel awake, highly energetic, laser-focused, and super confident. But your body pays a really fast price for that sudden acceleration. Your heartbeat spikes, blood pressure shoots up, the nervous system gets so overstimulated that it actually induces heavy anxiety and severe loss of sleep. Basically, the brain gets flooded with these intense reward signals incredibly fast, and it rapidly changes its baseline expectations.
Now, totally flipping the script, we have depressants. And despite what the name implies, they don't necessarily make you feel depressed. Actually, they profoundly slow down activity across the entire nervous system. So as the system decelerates, you feel this massive wave of relaxation. Drowsiness sets in, anxiety just kind of melts away. But this slowing effect carries a massive risk. If the nervous system slows down too much, breathing can become dangerously suppressed. The brain literally loses its ability to run vital, life-sustaining bodily functions.
And this really perfectly illustrates the stark physical opposites we're dealing with here. On the left, one massively accelerates your baseline, pushing your heart and energy into absolute overdrive. On the right, the other dangerously slows it down, suppressing the exact functions that keep you alive. That is exactly why mixing substances that slow the nervous system down can be so instantly lethal. Section 3. Pain, perception, and reality. Let's build on this and see what happens when drugs start altering our pain signals and really scrambling our perception of reality. So, opioids. These are highly powerful pain-relieving substances. They hijack the nervous system to completely block out the feeling of pain, usually replacing it with intense relaxation or euphoria. But much like depressants, they dangerously suppress breathing, which is exactly what makes an opioid overdose so critical. On top of that, the brain adapts so strongly to repeated opioid use that it creates this profound physical dependence. When the substance is suddenly taken away, the body realizes its chemical baseline is just gone, and it reacts with agonizing physical withdrawal symptoms.
Now, check out how we've mapped out hallucinogens and cannabis here. What's absolutely fascinating is how unpredictable and multisystemic their impacts are. They aren't just pulling a single lever in your brain. They scatter their effects all across your mood, your perception of reality, and your physical coordination, all at the exact same time. We're talking effects ranging from deep relaxation to absolute uncontrollable panic. Looking specifically at hallucinogens, they profoundly change how you see, hear, and experience reality. You might see completely unusual patterns or feel like time is literally slowing down. But because it disrupts reality so deeply, the effects are essentially a roll of the dice. It can trigger intense fear, severe confusion, and really dangerous behavior, especially if the person is already psychologically vulnerable. The brain's core processing center is thrown into total chaos.
Cannabis is similar in that it uniquely affects several completely distinct brain systems all at once. It's simultaneously hitting areas involved in memory, mood, coordination, and perception. And because it's hitting so many targets at once, the effects vary wildly.
One person might feel super relaxed, while the next person gets intense anxiety, confusion, or totally impaired judgment. It completely depends on your unique brain chemistry, the specific dose, and the actual strain of the substance.
Section 4. The Science of Addiction. This brings us to probably the most absolutely crucial question of this explainer. Why do some of these temporary system hacks actually turn into severe, long-term addictions?
Well, it all starts with this concept called tolerance. When the brain repeatedly gets unusually powerful artificial rewards from a drug, it adapts. Think of it like walking into a super loud room. Eventually, you've got to shout just to hear your own voice. The brain gets used to this artificial chemical flood, so it actually turns down its own natural receptors to compensate. It recalibrates its baseline, meaning you literally need to take more of the drug just to get the exact same feeling you had that very first time.
So addiction actually follows a very clear, strictly biological four-step path. Step 1, the drug creates a massive, unusually powerful reward signal. Step 2, the brain remembers that intensely efficient signal. Step 3, repeated exposure physically changes the structure of the brain's reward system. And Step 4, natural everyday activities, eating a great meal or hanging out with friends, they start to feel a lot less rewarding. The person keeps seeking the substance not because they necessarily want to, but because their brain has biologically adapted to require it just to feel normal.
Section 5, the long-term consequences. We've just seen exactly how the communication network gets hacked in the short term, so let's wrap up by looking at the lasting structural changes left behind.
A drug does not just alter how you feel for a few minutes or hours. Repeatedly taking a substance permanently alters the core functions of your brain. It fundamentally rewires how you process reward and motivation, it completely alters your biological stress response, and it impairs your decision-making centers. The short-term high? That's temporary. But these structural consequences to the brain's actual hardware, those can last for years after the drug wears off.
Now, it is absolutely vital to remember that understanding addiction is not about moralizing, and it's definitely not about fear-mongering. It's about neutrally observing the powerful, hard science of the human brain. By actually understanding the mechanics of neurotransmitters, stimulants, depressants, and the reward pathway, we're arming ourselves with science rather than stigma.
I want to leave you with this final, really provocative thought drawn directly from our source material about the permanent reality of these chemical hackers. A drug's impact echoes way beyond a temporary high. It reshapes the very pathways that make us who we are. So think about this. If the human brain can rewire itself so completely, so structurally, just for a chemical substance, what else is this incredibly powerful organ capable of learning and adapting to? Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer. If you found this breakdown valuable, make sure to stick around for more deep dives.